Welcome to the first official recap of ProjectDig. We're 2 weeks into the development now. We're on day 16, and I wanted to do a quick recap of everything that we've done so far. Just try to tie it together in a shorter video so that people like you who don't have 8 hours a day to watch the VODs can actually kind of keep up with the project. So ProjectDig is a 2D multiplayer automation survival sandbox game. That's a lot of stuff, I know. The best way to think of it is probably Terraria meets Factorio or vice versa. Side view sandbox game with automation and physics in that automation, so you can toss items around and bounce them around trying to get them to their destination. Did about 55 days of pre-production, made a prototype, put together a huge design document, and then finally decided to jump into development. We're making a custom game engine in C++ using a bunch of different libraries. Let me open up the tab for that. Here we go. We're using SDL2 with BGFX, planning to use Fmod and Spine and RackNet, possibly Lua with I think Sol2 or Sol3, whatever. Unit testing, we're doing Catch2. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that we haven't gotten to yet, so these are like, we're planning to use them, maybe. But anyways, so let's do a quick recap of the game engine, what progress we've made, and then call it. So we're making a custom game engine using the entity component system design, which is ECS, and a data-oriented design for the most part, where it makes sense. So entity component system is a system where it's entity, components, and systems, and they all do their own unique thing. Entity is literally just an ID that contains some information in the different bits, the generation, the index, and the type, the prefab or archetype of that entity. And then components are just data, the plain old data structures that we will keep in very tight, like dense vectors that are inside of our component pools. And so that way we can very efficiently iterate over those components. So if we want to iterate over specifically physics, we can do that blazingly fast. Try to avoid as cache misses as much as possible, and we're also we're keeping it densely packed. I won't get into like all the implementation details. If you ever have questions, you're welcome to come to the Twitch channel and ask. And then our systems, so entities are unique IDs, components are plain old data structures, and our systems are going to be just logic, no state whatsoever. So we have an example system here, which is just a list of functions inside of a namespace that we can register to our scheduler, and then that scheduler, so we can add a system with the functions, and then it will iterate over all of our systems. You can specify a frequency that you want a system to run at. So you might say, oh, well, let's have our, tree growing run every 5 seconds, since we don't really need it to be running every single frame. And then it updates the systems, and the systems are working on the data They're trying to keep the all of the logic in the systems are trying to be as small and compact as possible. They are stateless since they're namespaces, and if we ever do need to try to pass around data from one system to the next, we'll be using this thing called a world component, which exists within the world, and so it's associated with the world and not an entity. And so there's only one of these. They're also called singleton components. And in here, a system can get access to one of these world components, manipulate the data or read the data, and then another system can do the same. And so we've made a ton of progress. We have a spatial hash that can do spatial partitioning, and it's quite efficient. We spent quite a bit of time on that, actually. Let's see here. Where you can query a specific area within the spatial hash and be able to get back the unique entities that are within that area. We've also done a lot of unit testing, trying to be good about that. So we have a good amount so far, and we're using Catch 2 for that. So we have like testing the prefabs, testing component pools, and so on. Active component pool, which I added in just yesterday, and the world. So the world is the thing that contains all of the components. So a list of components, whenever you want to create a new entity, it just creates components within each pool that are associated to that entity ID. And so if you ever need to get a component, you go to the world and say, hey, give me a component for this entity ID, and it reaches into the corresponding pool and pulls out the component for it. And yeah, we've made a lot of progress. We now have a very simple system where we can spawn these. I completely forgot to even mention rendering, which we use BGFX for. That took a few days, which is a really cool system, and I'll actually touch upon that after I show this. But we have some rendering and these little pudding slimes bouncing around, just bouncing off of each other using the physics system. And yeah, it's going great. So I'll just keep bouncing forever. But yes, one last thing before I close it off. Our physics system, rendering is using BGFX. And it's pretty cool because with BGFX, we are able to set it up once and change which rendering backend we want to be using. So right now we're actually telling it to use OpenGL, and I can just as easily change it to DirectX by doing that. And so suddenly now we're using DirectX, which is very powerful. It will make porting hopefully a little easier in the future. We'll be able to, it also supports like Metal, so you could do OSX, and it has a bunch of other supports. Probably not all of that useful to us, but it is a very, very, very nice system to be able to have all of our rendering code wrapped in this nice API that we can just say, get like a vertex buffer and say, okay, render this, and it takes care of it depending on the backend. And that's it. So yeah, you're welcome to follow along on the Twitch channel, and I'll keep on posting VODs every day, and also recaps, bi-weekly recaps. So please give me feedback on this. I will be leaving comments open on recap videos. So if you liked a particular thing or didn't, let me know. I definitely want to improve upon this. We're starting at the bottom and we'll just try to get better. So yes, please give me feedback, and thanks for watching.